Hello players and GMs, and welcome to another video by Jetpack7. Before we get into it, I just want to remind you all that the Blackstorm Realms beta is still alive and active, so if you want access to that, follow the link in the description. It has a lot of cool stuff coming to it every other week, so if you want to get a sneak peek at the next book that will be coming out this year, go ahead and click that link and follow the directions there. This week, we've got another Unearthed Arcana review, and I am very excited about this one because I've seen some really good things about it, and I glanced over it before recording this video, and it's a really good one. It's one of my favorite ones that we've had so far. It is Draconic Options. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it, because it's kind of a long one, because there are not only races, there are also feats and spells included as well. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So this Unearthed Arcana is by some very familiar names: Ben Petrosor, Tamor Rahman, Dan Dillon was involved in this one, James Wyatt, and Jeremy Crawford. Pretty familiar names as usual. Been a fan of pretty much all the Unearthed Arcana that they've been involved in, so pretty happy to see them continuing to work on this. Right here at the beginning, this stuff is pretty straightforward, so I'm just going to kind of skip through it. It uses the same ability score increases that we've been seeing with the more recent releases. Rather than giving ability score increases per race, it's just kind of this like set standard 2 and 1 that you can add into whatever attributes that you want. Languages, creature type, etc., etc. They're starting to introduce some new creature types into the game that you can play as instead of just humanoid, which is exciting and fun. Moving on, Chromatic Dragonborn. So they've pretty much fixed the Dragonborn with this Unearthed Arcana, and I'm really excited about it because the Dragonborn race, I think, is one that has so much potential to be fun and cool and epic, but the previous iterations of it don't really feel fun and cool and epic. They kind of just feel like every other race. But I've really been enjoying all the like origins and stuff that they've been introducing in the last few UAs, and I sincerely hope that these go to live nearly as they are. But regardless, Chromatic Dragonborn, Chromatic Dragons are the evil dragons that you see, the red, blue, white, yellow, whatever. So to start off, you're a humanoid, so we're not moving into changing your creature types with these. They are just staying as humanoid, medium, 30-foot walking speed. Just like before, you're going to choose what ancestry you're coming from, so you're going to be able to choose black, blue, green, red, or white, and then you'll get a damage type according to that with your breath weapon. So they also fixed the breath weapon, whereas before it took an action to use a pretty underwhelming breath weapon. This one actually allows you to replace one of your attacks with the breath weapon in a 30-foot line, 5 feet wide. They have to make a dex save. It's determined by your Constitution modifier. I like that it uses Constitution because pretty much every class is going to want to have a decent Constitution. Obviously, this benefits some sort of class that's going to really build into Con, like Barbarian or Fighter or whatever, but either way, I think it's still going to be okay, because you just have to replace an attack with it. You don't have to use your whole action. So if you have multiple attacks, you can attack with your weapon and replace one of your attacks with this breath attack. And it scales up with levels. It scales up like a cantrip at 5th, 11th, and 17th level, increasing by a d8 every time. And to make it even more risk-free to replace attacks with this, you can use it a number of times, equal to your proficiency bonus, gaining them all back at a long rest. So to me, that really solves the problem. It's not ridiculously strong. It doesn't feel super overpowered to me. 2d8 damage, up to 3d8 at 5th level is a lot, but there's also potential that you roll like really low because it doesn't add anything to the damage. There's no additive of like your spellcasting modifier or your strength modifier or whatever. It's just that damage. It's just the damage dice. So there's a potential that you roll just straight up like minimum damage, which is really underwhelming. You also gain Draconic Resistance, which means you gain resistance to the damage type associated with your chromatic ancestry. And this one is really cool. I really liked this. It's really strong, so I'm not sure if it'll stay as is. I think it's maybe niche enough to be balanced, but it also feels like it might be really strong in certain situations, but I guess that's kind of the point. Chromatic Warding. Starting at 3rd level, as an action, you can channel your draconic energies to protect yourself. For 10 minutes, you become immune to the damage type associated with your chromatic ancestry, and you can only do this once you finish a long rest again. So basically, you take the resistance that you always have and soup it up, turning it into immunity for 10 minutes as an action. And that's not ridiculously strong if you take any of these except for green and red. So poison and fire are two of the most common elemental damage types in the game. Pretty much every every like high level monster that you're going to be fighting is going to be resistant or immune to poison or fire damage, and there are a lot of creatures that deal additional poison and fire damage in the game. Not to mention like popular traps and stuff like that use fire or poison. So that's going to be really, really strong. But since you don't really get anything else from this race, I don't think that's too strong. I don't think it's game breaking by any means. You get your breath attack, you get resistance, and then you get a 10-minute immunity once a day to that specific damage type, which I feel like won't be super strong until you know, fight a red dragon and you chose a red dragon thing. And then in which case the red dragon can still just fly up to you and whoop your ass the normal way. So this time they actually split chromatic and metallic dragons. So there are two separate races for which dragon type you've chosen. So same thing as before, humanoid, medium, walking speed is 30 feet, metallic ancestry, same thing. Breath weapon is pretty much exactly the same, except instead of a 30-foot line, it's a 15-foot cone. Otherwise, it is exactly the same. Draconic resistance, once again, exactly the same. The cool thing that this one gets that the other one doesn't is you actually get the metallic breath weapon, which is a different breath weapon than your base one. If you are familiar with metallic dragons at all, then you know that they actually also do get 2 breath attacks. So there's their damage breath attack, which is just the associated damage type up here, but they also get these really cool like special effect breath attacks that have very unique effects that are usually crowd control based. And so that's exactly what these are. So when you use this breath weapon, you can choose which one. So you don't have to pick it when you choose the race. You can just choose whenever you decide to use this one. You can either cause them to be pushed 20 feet away and be knocked prone, or they must succeed on a con save or become incapacitated until the start of your next turn. Obviously, I think this one is the strongest. I don't really see a time when I'd use this one, when I'd use the push over the incapacitation. I guess if you're fighting something that's probably going to have a lower strength save than a con save, then the chances are higher that they'd succeed on the con save one. I'm not sure, but and the fact that you get to choose makes it to where there's no downside. You know what I mean? You don't have to ever use that one. If it feels too weak, you don't have to ever use it. But maybe if you're, I don't know, on a cliff edge or something like that, then you can just launch them off the side of the cliff. I don't know, whatever. But I really like it. I think it's a really cool idea. I would almost like for there to be different ones for each associated dragon, because each of these metallic dragons gets a different breath weapon associated with them. So maybe they can add a few more extras, but maybe that's just overcomplicating things. Who knows? They also added gem dragonborns. And so we haven't really seen gem dragons in 5e yet. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge at what this next book is going to be. Probably something dragon-based. We got the dragon-based UA as well not long ago. So looks like we might be going for something dragon-based. Can't really think of any dragon ideas involved in D&D. Nothing, maybe like a, I don't know, like a dragon weapon of some sort, like a dragon spear, maybe, not sure. So gem dragonborn traits, once again, humanoid, medium, 30-foot walking speed, trace back to an ancestry. The damage type associated with these are the non-elemental damage types. So we're looking at force, radiant, psychic, thunder, and necrotic, which I am very, very, very excited for. The breath weapons, once again, a 15-foot cone, and they take the associated damage type. Already very, very strong, because creatures are much less likely to be resistant to these types of damage than they are the elemental damage types of the metallic and chromatic dragons. Once again, you get draconic resistance, less strong, because once again, creatures don't deal these damage types as often. You also get psionic mind, which allows you to telepathically speak to any creature you can see within 30 feet of you. You don't have to share a language, they just have to be able to speak at least one language, but they cannot respond to you. So you can speak into their minds, but they can't speak back to you, which is, you know, whatever. It can be helpful, I suppose, when you need to convey a secret message that you don't need them to respond to, but you know, it's not going to be super strong. And then Gem Flight. At 3rd level, you can use your bonus action to temporarily summon an array of spectral gems. You can fly for a minute. You gain a fly speed equal to your walking speed, and you can hover. You can only do that once per long rest. That's really, really great. I love being able to fly. The fact that it only takes a bonus action to do it, so it's not punishing in combat. It doesn't take your full action if you want to be able to fly in a fight, because that's probably when you'll be, you know, extending those wings. So yeah, all of the Dragonborn look really, really cool, and I'm so excited for these to become official, because the Dragonborn before just left a little bit to be desired for me, and they weren't a super popular race in my campaigns, which is surprising considering their dragon relatives. You would think that a race can use a breath attack, and that would make people want to play them, but they just weren't super appealing for whatever reason. But these seem much more unique and a little bit stronger, and they make me want to play them more, which is, to me, the goal of a race. And then we have kobolds, and I was surprised by this. I didn't think that they would be including a kobold playable race in here, but it makes sense because kobolds are descendants of dragons. They took a slightly different direction with this one, whereas before they would kind of play kobolds as these very like cowardly monsters, like we've kind of seen them portrayed in the past. These kobolds are actually more draconic in their ancestry, in that they talk a lot about the roar of a kobold. So it's kind of got this like draconic roar that actually manifests draconic power. So the kobolds are a little bit more intimidating and powerful rather than these like cowardly kind of characters. So once again, you're humanoid. This time you're small. Your walking speed is 30 feet. You've got dark vision. And then you've got this thing called Draconic Legacy, which allows you to choose one of these options when you select this race. You can either have advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the frightened condition on yourself. You know, one cantrip of your choice from the sorcerer's spell list using either intelligence, wisdom, or charisma as a spellcasting modifier, or you can make an unarmed strike with your tail. When you hit with it, the strike deals 1d6 plus your strength modifier instead of the bludgeoning damage normal for an unarmed strike. So it wouldn't work as well with like a monk per se, because once your unarmed strikes start to scale up, then I don't think your tail would scale that way because of this indicator right here at the end. But I guess it would work well with any fighter. You can just, you know, use your tail instead of a weapon. I don't really know what that entails. I don't really know what that implies. Yeah, I guess you can have a hand open and a shield if you want, or I'm not really sure, but either way, you can use your tail to hit people. And then here is where they get into the Draconic Roar. As a bonus action, you let out a roar at your enemies within 10 feet of you. Until the end of your next turn, you and your allies have advantage on attack rolls against any of those enemies who could hear the roar. You can use this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, regaining it all at a long rest. So you can let out a roar and basically scare all the enemies and allow you and your allies to hit them easier, which is a really, really cool effect. Nothing like that really exists in this game. It's kind of like a little mini fairy fire that you can just use in the middle of a combat. Kind of encourages you to wade in and play much more aggressively and position very forward and get right in the middle of the fight. But either way, I really like all of these races. The kobold is a very different take, which I like a lot more. I much prefer a kobold that wants to be more draconic, more dragon-like than they've been in the past. And then all of the Dragonborns are just really exciting to me. I talked about that plenty already. And now we get into feats, and there's a feat for chromatic dragons, there's a feat for metallic dragons, and gem dragons. So there's a different feat for each dragon type. Starting with the chromatic dragons, as bonus action, you can basically enchant a weapon to deal an extra d4 of one of the following damage types: cold, fire, lightning, or poison. So it'll deal that extra damage for a minute, and then after you use that ability, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. And then when you take acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison damage, you can use your reaction to give yourself resistance to that instance of damage, and you can use that reaction a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Once again, regaining all, etc. long rest. You know the drill. This one's really cool. It essentially gives you like little mini draconic buffs. It's very similar to the draconic resistance that you get at base if you choose the race, but for this one you don't have to choose the race. You can just kind of occasionally gain the resistance to that damage type. So it's a nice little like homage to that race. You get to pull bits and pieces from it. And then obviously an additional d4 of whatever elemental damage you choose is really nice as well, especially because you can choose between those different damage types every time you cast the spell, or every time you use the feat rather. So it's not you're not like tied down to one specific damage type. You're just channeling the power of chromatic dragons in general. So I really like that feat. The metallic one confused me a little bit because you learned the cure wound spell. You can cast the spell without expending a spell slot. Once you can until you finish a long rest, blah blah blah. You can also use it using spell slots, and you can use any of the spell casting abilities. It doesn't matter. I don't really know where the cure wounds came from personally. I didn't see anything in the kind of metallic Dragonborn bit other than this that cleanses and purifies, but that's about acid. So I don't think you're, bathing your allies in acid, and there's nothing healing based about the race, so I'm not entirely sure where that comes from. I might just be missing something about the lore of metallic dragons, but if you know anything, let me know in the comments, because I'm not entirely sure where that's coming from. So I'd maybe like to see that change, unless it, does make sense and I'm just missing it because I don't know something. But the second part I do really like. You can manifest protective wings that can shield you or others from attacks. When you or another creature you can see within 5 feet is hit by an attack roll, you can use a reaction to manifest spectral wings from your back for a moment. Essentially, you can roll a d4 and grant that bonus to the target's AC for that attack roll, potentially causing it to miss. You can use that reaction a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, gaining it all back at a long rest. So you can basically get like a very quick temporary shield on them that can block that can increase their AC up to 4 at a minimum of 1. Again, not super strong. I think it definitely does need another half to this feat. And I don't think this is strong enough to really justify it. It all around, even with this cure wounds, it feels kind of weak. So I'd maybe like to see this part change just to make it stronger. I don't really see a reason why the cure wound spell is added into the Metallic Dragon's spell list anyway. But it could also, I think, just use a buff. But I do like the idea that they're going for kind of a more protective idea for the metallic dragons, because I know metallic dragons aren't evil like the chromatic dragons, so they are actually interested in protecting life and protecting humanoids, etc. And finally, the gem dragons, and I really like this one. You can increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1, and then when you take damage from a creature that is within 10 feet of you, you can use your reaction to emanate telekinetic energy. The creature that dealt damage to you must succeed on a strength save equal to your 8 plus proficiency bonus plus your ability modifier of the score increased by this feat. So whatever ability score you increased with this feat is the one that determines the DC. If they fail, they take 2d8 force damage and be pushed 10 feet away from you. You can use that a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, regaining all uses at a long rest. So I really like this one. It's essentially just a little psychic reaction to push someone away and deal some damage. Nothing super complicated, but the fact that you can use it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus allows me to say I think that this is a pretty well-balanced feat. It doesn't deal a lot of damage, it doesn't offer a whole lot of utility, but being able to use it multiple times a day is really nice and is something that I won't complain about, along with the increase to whatever ability score you're looking for. So overall, I like the feats. I think the Metallic Dragon one is the weakest of the 3 for sure. I think it makes less sense thematically than the other 2 as well, but I think with some slight tweaking that one will be ready for live. That's kind of the only one that I don't really see myself ever wanting to take at any point unless they change it around. So let's go ahead and get into the spells. As you can see here, we've got a pretty wide array of the power of spells. We've got 2 second levels, a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th level spell. Pretty much for any of the classes here. Pretty wide array of classes here. So starting off, we've got Draconic Transformation, which is a 7th level transmutation spell. Casting time's only 1 bonus action, so you can use a bonus action to basically put some draconic features on yourself. You gain the following benefits until the spell ends, which is concentration up to a minute. You gain blind sight out to a range of 30 feet. Within that range, you can effectively see anything that isn't behind total cover, even if you're blinded or in darkness. Moreover, you can see an invisible creature unless the creature successfully hides specifically from you. So blind sight is really, really nice. Allows you to see through illusions and all that stuff. You gain a fly speed of 40 feet, and when you cast the spell and as a bonus action on subsequent turns for the duration, you can exhale a breath of shimmering energy in a 30-foot cone. Each creature in the area must make a dexterity saving throw, taking 3d8 force damage on a failed save or half as much damage on a successful one. So basically, you gain some little draconic features. You gain blind sight, you can fly, and then you can exhale a breath attack as a bonus action every turn while you're maintaining concentration. Honestly, the spell is good, but I don't know if it's 7th level good. I like the spell a lot, but it definitely doesn't feel like a 7th level spell. I don't know if I'd ever be really willing to spend a 7th level spell slot on this. It gives a lot of small buffs that make it a decently strong spell. Yeah, I don't know if this is, I mean, it's the 3rd strongest level spell slot, right? So I want something really, really strong. And blindside out to 30 feet is nice. A fly speed of 40 feet is nice. But like True Seeing is a 6th level spell that just gives you true sight for, I think, an hour. And Fly is a 3rd level spell that gives you a 60-foot fly speed, which is 20 feet more than this. And then 3d8 in a 30-foot cone just doesn't feel super strong by the time you're casting 7th level spells. So yeah, I think overall the numbers are just a little weak on this one for me for the level of spell it's associated with. So maybe bring it down, like even a 6th level spell slot I think would make a little bit more sense for this one. Because yeah, this just feels like an overall kind of weak 7th level spell to me. If you disagree, that's fine, but I would prefer this to be just a lower spell slot. I don't think the numbers need to be any higher, because I think once you start raising the numbers, then it starts to get kind of crazy. I would never cast this as a 7th level spell, in my opinion. Next up, we have Fizban's Platinum Shield. You create a field of silvery light that surrounds a creature of your choice within range. You can choose yourself. Sheds dim light out to 5 feet. As a bonus action, on subsequent turns, you can move the field to another creature within 60 feet of that field. The creature protected by the field gains the following benefits. They have half cover, so basically +2 to their AC. The creature has resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, and poison damage, and if they're subjected to an effect that allows it to make a dex save, they basically gain evasion. If they fail, they only take half damage, and if they succeed, they take none. Yeah, you basically give them evasion, +2 to AC, evasion, and resistance to all the elemental damage in the game. That one feels okay. Again, not super strong for a 6th level spell. I wonder if this could be a 5th level spell. Might be a little too strong for a 5th. I'm not entirely sure. Again, let me know in the comments where you think these spells should be. They just feel a little bit highly ranked for the actual power that they provide. The fact that you can bounce it from one creature to another as a bonus action might make up for that, because you can kind of pick and choose who it goes to based on the situation that they're finding themselves in. Could be really nice, but yeah, otherwise I think I'd like to see this as maybe a 5th level spell just at the current strength that it resides. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you disagree. Flame Stride is a 3rd level transmutation spell. Again, a bonus action. This one is probably my favorite spell, just thematically. I don't know how actually strong it is, but let me read through it. The billowing flames of a dragon cover your feet, granting you explosive speed. For the duration, your speed increases by 20 feet, and moving doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. So already, that's really good. You already gain 20 bonus movement speed, and you don't provoke opportunity attacks, which is incredibly nice. That's already pretty much stronger than the mobile feat, which gives you 10 feet of movement and requires you to attack creatures without provoking opportunity attacks. So this is already really, really nice. When you move within 5 feet of a creature or object that isn't being worn or carried, it takes 1d6 fire damage from your trail of heat. A creature or object can only take this damage once per turn. And then casting it at higher levels is actually really cool, because you increase your movement speed by 5 feet for each spell slot level above 3rd. And in addition, the spell deals an additional d6 fire damage for each spell slot above the 3rd. So it not only increases the damage, but it also increases the additional move speed that it gets, which I think is really fun. So yeah, I really, really like the spell. I do think that it fits right in at 3rd level. I think it is very, very powerful. Not so much for the damage aspect. It doesn't add much power to a fight for damage, really. You can streak your way through a fight and cause some cause a little bit of fire damage to creatures, but a d6 isn't going to like make or break an encounter by any means. But the fact that you can cast this as a bonus action and get that additional movement speed as well as ignoring opportunity attacks is really, really nice. And then I think the higher level casting is also pretty valuable. Not to mention, let's see, what other classes can get this? Artificer gets this one. Ranger gets this one. Okay, so that's actually really nice. Being able to cast this as an Artificer or as a Ranger would be really incredible. I like this spell a lot for those classes. I would almost like to see it on like Paladin or something. That would be really cool. Either way, I think that's a great spell. Icing Death's Frost, 2nd level evocation, this one. It's an action, 15-foot cone. This is kind of like a smaller, like, it's like Cone of Cold Jr. So they have to make a con save, 30-foot cone. On a failed save, they take 3d8 cold damage and they're covered in ice for 1 minute or until a creature uses its action to break the ice off itself or another creature. And while they're covered in ice, their speed is reduced to 0. On a successful save, they take half damage and don't get covered in ice. So essentially, this spell is a nice little combo of damage and crowd control. It's really strong. Honestly, like being able to cover a creature in ice, reduce their movement speed to 0 if they fail, and then they have to use an action. There's no like saving throw or anything that they can just make at the end of the turn. They have to use an action to break the ice off themselves, or they're going to just be covered in ice for a minute and have 0 movement speed the entire fight. So it's actually a lot stronger than it seems on the surface, but I don't think it's quite strong enough to be a third level spell. You could make a justification for it, but I think it fits in at 2nd level. Pretty simple spell here. It's good. I like it. I dig it. I think you put it in the game. Nathair's Mischief. This is a really fun one. This is an element of chaos. This is an illusion spell, 1 action, concentration up to a minute. You fill a 20-foot cube centered on a point you choose within range with Fey and Draconic magic. So we've got like some trickery, Fey, dragon combo going on here. Roll on the Mischievous Surge table to determine the magical effect produced. At the start of each of your turns, you can move the cube up to 10 feet and re-roll on the table. So you can basically fill a 20-foot cube with a mischievous effect. And the 4 effects are as follows. The smell of apple pie fills the air, and each creature in the cube must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be charmed by you until the start of your next turn. Bouquets of flowers appear all around, and each creature in the cube must succeed on a dex save or be blinded until the start of your next turn as the flowers spray water in their faces. This is just pulling on like just like classical prank imagery, I'm not sure. Each creature in the cube must succeed on a wisdom save or begin giggling until the start of your next turn. A giggling creature is incapacitated and uses all of its movement to move in a random direction. Drops of molasses appear and hover in the cube, turning it into difficult terrain until the start of your next turn. So I think the first 3 are definitely stronger than number 4. For the most part, difficult terrain definitely isn't as debilitating as charmed, blinded, or incapacitated. But they are still all nice effects. And the fact that you can move it around and the fact that it's a 10-foot cube, or 20-foot cube rather, makes it, I think, a really, really nice utility spell that isn't in the game yet. There's nothing in the game like this that has like these sort of random effects that can just cause absolute chaos in a fight and potentially change the course of a fight. And illusion spells need all the help they can get, in my opinion, especially at low levels. So this is a really nice spell and pretty viable in combat. And I'm excited for this to make its way in, because I'll definitely be using that. Rollo Themes Psychic Lance. It's an enchantment spell, 4th level, 1 action, 120-foot range, just verbal, which is cool. And it's just a instantaneous spell. You unleash a shimmering lance of psychic power from your forehead at a creature that you can see within range. Alternatively, you can utter the creature's name. If the named target is within range, it gains no benefit from cover or invisibility as the lance homes in on it. So if the creature is like hiding from you, then you can utter their name and they won't gain any benefit from that. If the named target isn't within range, the lance dissipates and the spell is not expended. The target must succeed on an intelligence saving throw or take 10d6 psychic damage and be incapacitated until the start of your next turn. That is very, very strong. But I don't think it's crazy. It's really, it's potent, don't get me wrong. For a 4th level spell, this feels like a 5th level spell to me. Like if you were to show me this spell, I would guess that it's 5th level, just because of the damage numbers and the fact that they gain, and the fact that it can incapacitate a creature for a whole turn. It feels like a 5th level spell, but the fact that spells like Fireball and Lightning Bolt are 3rd level, I think kind of justify this being at 4th, though you could make an argument for that, because I think there aren't really any other 4th level spells that carry with it this kind of power outside of maybe like Polymorph or something. But yeah, in terms of damage spells, nothing like this really exists this early on, so it's definitely a very potent spell. Not much else to talk about. It's really good. I like it, other than maybe the spell rank. And lastly, summon Draconic Spirit. Essentially, with this one, it's an action to cast, concentration up to an hour, range of 60 feet. Essentially, you can summon a Draconic Spirit that is represented by either a chromatic gem or metallic dragon, whatever type it represents, and then it'll gain some benefits based on which one you choose. It fights with you, it shares your initiative count, but it takes its turn immediately after yours. It obeys verbal commands, and if you don't issue any, it takes the dodge action and uses its moves to avoid danger. So it's basically just another body. It's another ally that can fight with you. Its AC is 14 plus the level of the spell. So at base, this thing has 19 AC, which is really, really good. If you cast it at higher levels, obviously that increases. The HP is 50 plus 10 for each spell slot, spell level above 5th. Again, not bad. Not a whole lot of HP, which I think is good, because when you start to get into like the really high AC levels with summons, it starts to get a little crazy. Obviously, if you can break concentration, then it just goes away, but still really strong. 30 feet of movement speed, fly feet of 80 feet, and a swim speed of 30 feet. You can see here the stats are pretty reasonable for a dragon. 19 strength, 17 con, etc, etc, etc. Don't need to pay too much attention to that. The only thing that really changes based on the type of dragon that you choose, from what I can tell, is this is the damage resistance. So if you choose a chromatic or metallic dragon, then they gain resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison. And if you choose a gem dragon, then it gains the other ones: force, necrotic, psychic, radiant, thunder. They've got immunity to charmed, frightened, poisoned. They've got blind sight, dark vision, 12 passive perception. They understand Draconic and any of the languages you speak. Proficiency bonus equals your proficiency bonus. And then something that's cool with this one is that when you summon the dragon, you can choose one of the damage resistances that they have, and you gain that damage resistance until the spell ends. In terms of attacks, they do get multi-attack, so they can use its breath weapon, and it makes a number of bite and claw attacks equal to half the spell's level. So if you cast this at 6th level, they can make a breath attack and make 3 attacks, which is really, really strong. Honestly, they get a fair amount to hit. They get your spell attack modifier to hit. They have 10 feet on all of their attacks. They can only hit one target. D6 plus 4 plus the spell level's piercing damage. So if it hits, it deals a D6 plus 4. If you're casting this at 5th level, just at base, it's plus 9. So a D6 plus 9 piercing damage if it hits on every single attack. So if you cast this at 5th level, that's 2 additional attacks along with this breath weapon that deals 2d6 in a 30-foot cone. So obviously the breath weapon is much weaker than like a actual dragon's breath weapon, which is reasonable, but still 2d6 damage from the breath weapon in addition to the damage from the 2 attacks, which if they both hit is 2d6 plus 18. That's a fair amount of damage from this thing, and the fact that it can do that every single turn and also just be a front line for your team, like you can just send this out into a fight and it'll fight with you. So it is a ball of hit points and AC as well. So this spell is no joke, and I think this definitely fits at 5th level. It doesn't feel too strong for 5th level. To me, it's definitely potent, but it's just another one of those summoning spells that if you attack the caster of the spell, then it goes away entirely and it was nothing. So it's strong, but it doesn't feel super strong. But I really, really like this spell. I like all of these spells, honestly, just going back through them. Some of them feel a little bit over their level. Some of them might feel a little bit under their level. Either way, just for Unearthed Arcana, I think this is a really awesome start, and I'm looking forward to all of these spells making their way to live, basically. And I hope that we'll be able to get a hint at what a lot of people are guessing to be a Dragonlance book. I've seen a lot of people begging for it. I've seen a lot of people in the Facebook groups that I'm a part of talking about how they want a Dragonlance book, and hopefully this is a big sign that that is in fact what's coming, or at the very least a dragon-based book. Because as you know, we at Jetpack 7 love dragon-based books. But that is all for the Unearthed Arcana this week, so thank you all for watching. I hope this gave you guys some good insight into what's to come. Let me know in the comments what you think about this one, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you around.